Hey guys, it's Taylor from SE Trading X. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to use the SE Trading X system version 2.0. Alright, so let's get into the do's and don'ts before anything else. With this system, you trade the daily, the H4, the H1, and if you're impatient and can't wait for the double confirmations between time frames, then you can trade the M15. This is for swing traders. So the daily, the H4, the H1, and the M15. And that's it. You do all that on currency pairs. Even indices, it'll work just fine. M15, H1, H4 daily. We don't trade the M1 or the M30. The M5, however, this is for scalpers. Scalpers, you trade the M5, you do not trade the M1. So basically, we don't trade M1 and M30. We just don't trade the M1 and the M30 using the system. The M1 moves a little too crazy and sometimes it can fake you out. But for scalping, you want to use the M5. So scalpers, the M5 is the one you want to use to scalp indices. Everyone else, M15, H1, H4, daily. That's perfect. Alright, so now how do you trade it? As you can see, unlike the previous system that would constantly have, double confirmations on all these things, that kind of made everybody get faked out. So the new system is designed to completely wipe out fake outs and repaints. It's totally solid, as you can see, 100% solid. There are less signals because with the old system, you would have gotten a bunch of signals, but majority of them would have been fake outs. But with this new system, everything is 100% solid. So this is how you trade it. For trading buys, you're going to wait for an arrow to point up, and you're going to wait for this V to form. You don't have to wait for anything to close in your direction. You don't have to wait for a candle closing direction. You don't even have to wait for it to be close to your lines. You just have to wait for a V to form. The V forms, you enter. You have your arrow, the V forms, you enter. That's all it is. Arrow, the V forms, and enter. Don't wait for a candle closing your direction. You don't have to do that. Just wait for the V to form and then you can enter on your buy. Same thing goes with the sell. Now don't worry about this white line. It's just a design I put in there because I didn't want everything just to be like solid blue. I just put that just for design. So the arrow points down for a sell. You wait for this peak to form. The peak is what you want to form. Just the peak. You see it? These two lines. Not one. These two lines. The two peak. That's what you want to form. And then you can enter on your sell. And that's it. That's literally it. That's how simple it is. You wait for your peak. You get your arrow first. Of course, when you get the arrow first, if the peak hasn't formed, you don't enter. You just let it do what it's doing because now the system is trying to confirm a successful sell zone. When the peak forms, it's confirmed a successful sell zone. All you do is you enter and that's it. Now scalpers, you'll be trading the M5. As you can see, double confirmation, you would have entered, double confirmation, you would have entered. Right now, there's no peak. So you do not enter. There's absolutely no peak, so you don't enter. Even though the arrow is pointing down, that's the first confirmation. It's trying to confirm. When the peak forms, then you can enter. So don't be fooled by that. Always remember the rules. For a sell, we wait for that peak. For a buy, we wait for this V. Once you get those two confirmations, then you're free to enter in the correct direction. That's simple, and that's how you use it. Now you're asking, there's a lot of arrows going up and about here. We got all these arrows. What do they mean? Because clearly when some of them came up, it went into the correct direction. Now you're going to be scalping. When you're scalping, you want to be in the markets for like a certain period of time. You're in, you're out, but you're constantly watching your charts. So you have to practice with this one first in demo. Like everything, I always say practice in demo. When you get an arrow that points in your direction, Wait for a candle to close in the direction the arrow is pointing and you can quickly scalp it. Wait for an arrow to close in the direction and you can quickly scalp it. But the absolute direction that the market is going is the double confirmation. So in this instance, you see you have an arrow pointing up and you got your V, so you know it's a buy zone. When this one would have popped up, don't enter. I say do not enter on this one. When you're in a buy zone, wait for buys. Scalp your buys. When in a buy zone, wait for your buys, scalp your buys. When in a sell zone, let me get a better example. You see, like, we had this long wait, this long period right here. So as you can see, this whole period is a sell zone. We had our confirmation. Say you missed this, right? You got an arrow pointing up. You didn't get your double confirmation, so you know it's not entering a buy zone, it's still a sell zone. So you don't enter on buys and sell zones. You enter on sells. So you get this arrow pointing down, so you would have entered on that. Don't worry about it because it's still a sell zone. Even if it just pushes up a bit, it's still a sell zone, so you're still safe. And it goes down, it pushes up, you get your arrow, goes down, it pushes up, you get your arrow, goes down. The only time you stop trading sells in a sell zone is when it starts to confirm a buy zone. When you see the buy zone confirmed, that's it, your work is done. In the sells, you're out. Now again, say you missed this buy and the complete buy zone. You don't trade the sells, you trade the buys. That's the safest option. You always trade the trends. Don't trade against the trend. This is the M5. This is for the scalpers. Let's do that. All right, see? Right here we had a buy zone. Even though it's sold, we still, for safety, you do not trade against the trend. The system is telling you that it's a buy zone, so we're only going to trade buys. So scalpers, you only trade buys in buy zones, you only trade sells in sell zones. That is the safest option. This same rule applies for everybody else, swing traders. The same rule applies on the H4, the M15, H1, and the daily. Say you missed the sell. As long as it's a sell zone, you're going to trade the sells. You could trade the buys, but this is only after you are very experienced with the system. This is after you put in the time and then you know, like, when fake outs are coming. And of course you'd have your own experience in the market. But in sell zones, only trade sells, and buy zones only trade buys. Because sometimes you have this long wait period and you don't want to wait that all the time. So you miss this entry, it's a buy zone. You're not going to trade the sells, you're going to trade the buys. Because initially, if you had caught this buy from the beginning, you would have continued holding your positions until the sell. So say you caught this buy, you see the arrow pointing up, you'd have gotten that, you'd have entered again on more buy positions because you're well in profit from this. From here to here, you're well in profit. Let's look for another example for you. Right here. Sell zones. You see that? We have a sell zone. Say you missed it. You would not enter on any buys. The buys tell you it's pushing up, it's fine, but don't trade against the trend. Always trade with the trend. You get your sell right there. As long as it's a sell zone and the arrow is pointing down, feel free to re-enter on sells. The only time you get out of your sells is when the market reconfirms for a buy zone. That's so so when you enter on buy zones, you only buy. When you enter on sell zones, you only sell. That's the simple 100% rule to get successful using the system. And literally that's it, guys. Remember, M5, M15, H1, H4 daily. Do not trade the M30 or the H1 or the M1. All right, so that's it for me, guys. Let's get into these markets and let's make this money. Taylor out.